Welcome to my Wednesday ramblings. This week we're preparing for week 4 of the message series, Where is God? In the first week of the series, we heard the story of Elijah, who stood at the entrance to the cave and experienced the Lord in the still, gentle breeze that blew across his face. In our second week, we heard the story of the Canaanite woman, who came to Jesus begging that he might cure her daughter. And after Jesus had refused her, she challenged him to consider what might have been considered a narrow view of what his mission was. And she said, but even the house dogs can eat the scraps that fall from the table. And then last week we heard the story of Jesus asking his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? And after they'd given what might be considered the rote answers to the question, he then asked them, but who do you say I am? He was inviting them to see God not in the external, but actually in the presence of Jesus as he walked amongst them. A challenge that we perhaps face each day in our lives as well as we meet Christ in our brothers and sisters. This week it becomes a little bit more challenging because Jesus now prophesies that he is going to Jerusalem, and there he's going to be put to death, but then will rise after 3 days. And of course, Peter, like many of us, when we hear news that is uncomfortable or which we don't want to hear, objected and remonstrated with Jesus. And Jesus put him in his place and told him that the way you're thinking is not man's way, but not God's way, but it's Satan's way. And so we have a challenge today to ask ourselves, what does it mean to take up our cross? What does it mean to follow, as Christ did, the way of the cross in everyday life? His steps towards Jerusalem were towards a particular purpose for our salvation. And so there are many ways in which each of us each day are invited to consider what it means to be sons and daughters of God, what it means to be faithful witness in the midst of the world in which we live. We know from the first reading, the prophet Jeremiah telling us that frequently he is the laughing stock, the butt of people's jokes. And yet there is this passion in him to speak the message. Paul says the same thing in the letter to the Romans. He says that the perfect way is to be a follower of Christ. So I'd like to hope that as we prepare for this Sunday's readings, we might think about, how do we find God in our everyday? Where is God in our lives? Is he in the things that are comfortable, the things that seem to give us pleasure? Or is he in the cross, that gentle cross that each of us is called to carry, to know that we too walk on the journey of faith, so that ultimately we too can experience the glory of resurrection? Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week on my Wednesday ramblings.